Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, a podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. I'm Naji. In this episode, get ready to get the equivalent of a double espresso. You will dive into Rob Salafia's universe, talking about how to lead from your very best self and reach your full potential. I met Rob in a workshop about storytelling for leaders at MIT Sloan and found his tips and advice so powerful. In today's episode, we'll bring those to light for all of us leaders of the 21st century. Rob is an author, speaker, executive coach, and CEO of Protagonist Consulting Group. He combines 2 decades of experience as a top leadership development executive with a well-established career in the performing arts. Rob has a passion for coaching leaders to develop their presence, tell compelling stories, and establish authentic connections. He's the author of an amazing book, Leading from Your Best Self. I really strongly recommend it. What's unique about Rob, as you get to hear him and know him, for the first half of his career, he was a performing artist where he traveled the globe delivering his unique one-person variety show. Rob is a lecturer also in MIT Sloan School of Management and an MIT Leadership Center Master Executive Coach. Over the past 20 years, he has worked with numerous Fortune 500 companies. I am thrilled having you with me today, Rob, in this podcast, and so much looking forward for our chat.
Thank you, Najib. Very much looking forward to this as well.
Rob, I'm eager to hear more about your story, your journey. What can you share with us today?
Well, there was something that you mentioned earlier, and that was about helping people to lead from their very best selves. And I know that your work is in about leading from love. And that's not a term that is, or a word that's really used that often in the business world. And people kind of get a little nervous when they hear that. But I tend to use the word appreciate. And appreciate is very closely related to that word love. And appreciating the gifts in someone else. A lot of the work that I do is based on humanistic psychology. And if you Carl Rogers, one of the founders of humanistic psychology, said one of the primary motives of every human being is to self-actualize or to live to their potential. So if you think about that, every person really wants to be alive. They want to be active. They want to be engaged and fulfilled. And so if we can look into other people, we look into ourselves first and understand what makes us come alive, but then also as in terms of leadership, because I know you're at MIT and I'm a leadership coach, when we look into others, there's a person inside of every person that wants to be alive, to be in their best self, to be fulfilled. And our jobs as leaders is to help develop that talent in a way that helps that person bring their best contribution to the team, to the organization, in the very best way.
I've been asked, because I'm so convinced with what you said, and I've been asked for practically, how do you coach leaders to do this, right? To care about their teams and really help them get to their full potential. So any advice, I know you have many, but if there is 1 or 2 that you would push us as leaders to consider and do.
Well, let me back up a little bit, Naji, and start to answer that question. But I'll go back to the first half of my career, which was as a performing artist. So I started as a street performer, actually. I went to college, graduated. I was I was working in the area of geography and international development, but I got very disillusioned. I ended up taking a left-hand turn and went into theater. And I was an accomplished tap dancer, rope and wire walker, storyteller. But the things that I learned when I wanted to, first thing that I learned was I needed to have a vision for myself of what I wanted to create. And so as a street performer, I would be in Boston, and this was back in the early 80s. And there was a group of people there, the group of us, they were all college educated folks and looking to bring this their own mark to theater. And so I would watch some of these performers that would have 200 or 300 people around them and be amazed at how they could hold the attention, hold them, and just delight their audience. When I tried it, I had 15, 16 people around me. And then all of a sudden, like the wind, they'd be gone. And I'd be wondering, like, how do they do this? Like what do they do? And so what I learned was I had to make myself interesting. But it's a trick, right? So the idea is you don't just make yourself interesting by like running around. I found that you make yourself interesting by becoming interested in my audience. So once I learned to become interested in them and invite them into the experience I was trying to create, whether I would bring someone, hold someone's hand, and I would bring them into the circle. I would teach them how to do a bow. I'd get other people to applaud. And then all of a sudden you just have people on the outside hear that applause, and then they'd be drawn to it. So I would learn how to gather an audience. I learned that by becoming interested in them. And so it's an interesting thing when someone says to me, how do I connect better with my audience? I say, shift that perspective. So rather than think about how I can connect better with them, think about how you can allow them to connect better with you. And that shift is fundamental to becoming a great performer, is that it's not so much about you, but it's about your audience and the experience that you want to create for them. And the same thing holds true for leaders and leadership.
That's so powerful. So I want to double click on it, especially in this word of, hybrid, where we're trying to connect differently. And hopefully we will soon be able, in some part of the world, connect back in person. But we always say connect at a different level, get to know your people. And you started with this, like the biggest advice, becoming interested in the other, right? And making sure that how you framed it allow them getting better connected with you. So I'm taking this and I love it. Any um, any experiences with this in the corporate world or in the healthcare world that you've seen, that you advised executives on doing?
So as a storyteller, I grew up in theater as a storyteller. I find that story sharing, storytelling is very powerful. And then every person has a story. Every person is coming to every moment with their own story. It's vast. It's their struggle in life. And when we take a risk and share our story with others, and I'll ask them and invite them to share theirs with us, it builds a connection of understanding of where that person is truly coming from, what they want in their lives, what they're struggling with, what their gifts and talents are, and it creates a more authentic connection. Because if you think about it, how many I think of relating in terms of levels. If you think about your day at work, you say, how many of your interactions would be considered transactional in nature? And if you think about them, so how many of them would you like to be more than transactional? Transactional, it's like going to a fast food, window. You order it, you pay for it, you get it, you go. You don't care about the person. Sometimes you do. You can, if you go there often enough, you can. But a transaction is, if we examined our interactions during the day, how much, we have a lot of transactions, but the quality of them, the nature of them. And so we want to lift them up or deepen them a little bit. The next level I look at is congenial, being nice. How many of our relationships that we have are just nice, but they're very surfacey. They don't go any deeper. That's where we want to begin to look. And if you look at the next level, I like to see is operational and then authentic. Operational level of relating is understanding what is someone's unique approach to solving problems, what matters to them and the way they like to get things done. We often have to learn, and when we want to work well on teams, we have to learn to relate to each other on a very operational level. But that's still, it's getting closer to, better teamwork, understanding differences of approaches. And I think from a leadership perspective, that's a very important part of the process. And then the next level is an authentic level of relating. And I think to answer your question, again, it's about sharing who we are, what our story is, and being interested in someone else's story as well.
To that specific point about storytelling, you obviously it taught me and helped me also grow on how I share my story during those sessions. Many leaders I've been discussing with, and I was, part of those leaders where I didn't feel anything special about my story. Like nothing is interesting about my story. And then when I double clicked also, I think it's also related to some fears of not only being vulnerable, but once you tell your story, it's out and this is it. And people will see you through this lens, right? Where today I feel it's so powerful because I've done it and I've seen the impact because people can relate more to why I do what I do. Why am I like this as a leader? Why I'm passionate about people? Why am I passionate about patients I'm serving every day? But to get there, the very first step is stressful, I would say, for leaders.
Yeah.
As I know you help and coach us towards this, any advice for our listeners?
Sure. Well, you bring up a really interesting point, Naji. Brené Brown, a very powerful writer and speaker, talks about choosing your vulnerability. And I really think this is a powerful concept. In other words, you can't just, you have to, it's a gradual process of opening up. You have to find out if you think you would like to learn how to do this and if you understand that there is, if you say a business case about, being vulnerable, this goes back to a very old school form of work, is that you hang up your personality at the door and your life at the door, and there's a separation between your home life, your other life, and then work. And then it's just all business. But we know that that's very hard to pull off, especially now in the virtual world, the past year and a half. It's all mixed up together, so, when you're on a video call, all of a sudden, the cat goes across your screen, the kids come in, open the door, you realize that, that it's okay. And if we're going to do our best work and bring our best contribution forward, we have to learn how to be more integrated. It's not balanced. Even that word balance means it's one thing or another. And you and I both know it's this integration. And as an example, one of the things that I invite people to do, especially if they're going on a Zoom call or if they're, let's just say the virtual world. We go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. We often roll in hot from one meeting to another, and we miss the opportunity to truly connect. This is in our drive to be productive. We miss the opportunity to connect. And so one of the most important things a leader can do is to manage these transitions and learn to be fully present in the meeting and understand what is distracting them from being there 100%. So as an example, I'm on a call with four people that I'm coaching. And in the beginning of the call, I say, let's do a quick check-in. what percentage present are you right now? What's keeping you from being here 100%, mentally and emotionally mixed? So one of the fellows said, well, I just want to let you know, I have my dog right here. And this morning, we almost had to take her to the hospital. But she's okay right now, but at any time, she might get sick and I might have to leave. So if you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at her. So just think about this. If he hadn't told the other folks or told us about his dog, he would be we would be watching him look down at the dog, but we wouldn't know what was there. And we would be wondering what's going on. And what's distracting him? Why isn't he paying attention to us or to the meeting? But by being vulnerable or transparent and saying, let me tell you what's going on in my life right now, what's pulling me away, all of a sudden now we're invested in him and his pet. We want to know what's going on with him and his pet. And hey, how's your dog doing? And we'll understand. And that's the human quality that we need to bring into leadership, because there's a business case for that. Because now he's not struggling with managing this distraction between him and his dog. It's accepted. And everybody else on the call understands his situation and is understanding. So that enables them to do better work. They're not distracted and they're actually supportive. He feels better. He's not under threat. His status is not under threat. His other things, which, creates a self-regulation issue, which then, it's like, we're not able to bring our best critical thinking when we're under stress and under threat. And so now he feels more relaxed, more comfortable, safe. It's creating that psychological safety that's necessary for us to bring our best selves forward.
Yes. And, you talked about being human. I think this is what many discovered during those past months, that we're all human, right? We have our lives, things can happen, sharing them openly. And you talk in your book also about presence and leadership presence, and you teach about this. So being present at the moment, you shared it just now with us, but there's a different lens, I imagine, about leadership presence that you also teach. What would you say, in some words, the definition about the leadership presence and how we should be able to show it?
So I have a couple of different ways to think about it. First of all, presence, just the word presence, is when you have access to all the different parts of yourself. This means both internal and external. The internal is your motivations, your values, your experiences to date. The external is the impact that you have on others of your presence. Leadership presence or executive presence is how you show up in the context of your role and the environment within which you operate. So there's how we show up normal day to day, how we show up in various roles and environment, and the closest we can bring those two together means that we're not feeling like we have to hide anything. We're not feeling like we can bring all of ourselves to every situation. And then if you think of presence as layers of experience, it's how people experience us. So that means energetically, physically, vocally, emotionally, relationally, intellectually. What are the words that come to mind when people think about you? These are things that are within your control that you can, once you begin to develop an awareness of the impact that you have on others, you can begin to modify and moderate that. It's how people experience themselves when they're with you. So this means that as the impact that you have on others, you also have an impact on the environment. Do people feel safe in your presence? Do they feel large? Do they feel valued? Or do they feel small? Do they feel like, oh, I better not talk right now because, you know, a good way to notice this is if you've ever left a meeting and you said to yourself, you held back in that meeting and you didn't share what you really wanted to share, and you left that meeting and said, I really wish I could have said this, then you know something's going on, that there's a little bit of dysfunction going on. Because if you can't share in the appropriate manner what you see as important for that moment, then there's something going on there that's keeping everyone in that room from bringing their best ideas and the best selves forward. So that's the environment that you're trying to create, is one of psychological safety. So again, it's how people experience you, how they experience themselves when they're with you, and the story they share about you after you've left. That ends up being, that's sort of like your brand, if you will.
Yeah, and that's an amazing lens to look at it. I honestly, since I heard you say it, I've been thinking about it, because it's many times we think, okay, what is the impact or the perception that I'm having after I leave? But the way you frame it, which is how people experience your presence, actually, how do they feel? It's just so powerful. Thank you for sharing it that way.
Oh, you're welcome.
Rab, I'd love to move into a different section where I will be giving you a word and hear your top of mind reaction to it. So the first word is stories.
Wow. Personal connection, interesting experiences, lessons learned, deep connections with others, deep curiosity, appreciating differences.
Talking about differences, the second word is inclusion.
Well, inclusion, for me, it's in my bones, because I think about, we grow up, or we growed up, did we grow up as an insider or an outsider? And so I grew up kind of like as an outsider. And so I noticed now people that are on the periphery of a circle. Everyone has a point of view. Everyone has something of value to add. So reaching out and including people. I always picture an image of going to a party, like let's say it's in a large ballroom and it's really crowded, and you walk in and you see all these small circles of people talking, and you walk up to a circle and you go, does that circle automatically open up and invite you to come in, or does it stay closed? We want to make sure that when somebody walks up to that circle that we're in, we open up and include them.
That's a great way to see it. What about best self?
Best self are those moments when we feel most alive, engaged, effective, when we feel most natural, when we feel really like things are going to work out, when you're in the flow. I have a background in the arts, and so I have come to really value discipline and practice. And when you work really hard to earn something, and it's like now it's inside of you, there's what I call a signature stance. How did you, when you were in that time in your life or in that moment, how did you hold yourself? Like how did you stand? These are keys to our confidence. How did the words come out of your mouth? What was the energy state, the emotional state that you were in? These are flow states. And so best self is when we feel comfortable, engaged, and alive. And when we're not trying to be something other than we are.
The last word is spread love in organizations.
Well, spreading love in organizations. I had a conversation with an old friend of mine I used to work with at American Express. And in 2008, 2009, I worked with her for many years, and we had a really great relationship. And in 2009, when the recession hit, they were an organization that really pulled back, and so you had a lot of people in the organization that um, went out into other companies. And so she looked and said, "Well, I can stay right here. My boss and I, we love each other. We work really well together." And she said, "But I want to challenge myself now." And so she challenged herself, took another job, in the same company, but with another leader, and they did not get along at all. And she spent, I don't know how many years in that new role and was not very happy at all, and ended up leaving the company and, jumped around a little bit. She's retired now. But when we talked, when she looked back, she said, one lesson I learned: go where you're loved, go where you're appreciated, where people recognize your skills and talents and want to develop them. I can't give you any better explanation than that.
Thank you. That is beautiful. Rabbi, I want to go back to the inclusion. I know you're passionate about it, and I experienced your talent of storytelling, but coming from a strong story that you have. So you mentioned a little bit while giving your reaction about inclusion. Would you be willing to share with us your personal story and what drove you to become so passionate about including people and being in this inner circle?
I'll give you one story that was an example. Hot sunny summer day, wind is wet and salty on my face. I'm sitting on the back of my uncle's boat. I have a hot dog in my hand. The smell of diesel from the engine is making me sick. I hear the seagulls like cawing, and it's like they're laughing at me. I look over my shoulder and I can see my two brothers and my cousin in the little rowboat rowing away, having a great time and laughing. And I can't go with them. It's like I can never go with them. I look at my mom and dad, my aunt and uncle, and they're in the boat. They're having a great time. Everybody's having a great time but me. And I look around and I'm like, I'm miserable. All of a sudden it was like this like thermometer rose up in me, and popped my head off. I stood up, and in defiance, whoosh, I'm in the water. My mother was like, "Oh, what happened?" My uncle got a boat hook, hooked me up, put me in front of my dad, soaking wet. And he said, "What the heck were you thinking?" I said, "I'm always left behind." So this is like a little kid thing, but these messages get encoded in us. And so it's always the one that was like, trying to get seen, get heard, get noticed. And so it was a pattern. When I went into theater, when I first started theater, it was like notice me, until something let go. And then I realized an audience doesn't want you to, ask that, to cajole them into liking you. You have to let go and allow them to connect with you naturally. The same thing is with inclusion. There are a lot of people that are on the outside, go, pay attention to me, look at me. It's like, notice me. And so inviting them into the party. I've heard a lot of people's stories, especially at MIT, what it took to get to MIT. And a lot of folks grow up, that, have become engineers, but before that, their heads are in the books, and they're not social animals. They might not have a lot of friends, and so that feeling of being on the outside is very difficult until they find their way into a place where they're more alike. And so it's this balance between seeking people that are like us in similarity, and also appreciating people that are different than us. The core of this for me is, having done storytelling all over the world, is that, and it goes right back to the beginning of our conversation about the primary motive of every human being is to self-actualize, to be their best selves. We are all human. We all have a story. We all come from parents. We have siblings and families. That's what we have more in common than we do differences. So understanding that core of humanity is extremely powerful. Then where we grow up, our cultural backgrounds, our experiences in life, these are the things that make us unique and different. Appreciating each person's point of view and the value that they bring in those experiences is what's really powerful. So if we can balance this idea of we feel comfortable among people that are like us with I'm curious about people that are different than me and different than us. And that balance is going to make us much more healthy in the long run.
What an amazing way to summarize this discussion and question, Rob. Thank you so much. And combining those two, this is where magic starts, right? Understanding commonalities and opening up, being curious about others.
Well, I remember I've always been one that has, I extended my look out to other worlds. So when I was in college, I spent a semester abroad in Kathmandu, Nepal. Imagine being 20 years old, getting on your first airplane ever, and having to fly over Europe, fly over the Middle East, land in New Delhi, India, and then take another plane up to Kathmandu. And it was an extraordinary, extraordinary time. When I was coming home, I took 2 weeks to go north of New Delhi. And I was going to a meditation retreat. This is 1975. I took my first mindfulness meditation retreat in northern India. And I was on the train platform in Chandigarh, which is in the Punjabi area of India. And this young boy who's like my age comes up to me and he wants to speak English, of course. And then he said, how long are going to be, where are you going? How long what's your timetable? And I said, well, I had a couple of days to go some sightseeing. He said, well, why don't you come and visit with my family, which I did. So it was a Sikh family. And so I spent 2 days with, 2 evenings with his mom, his dad, him and his sister. And it was really amazing. I went on long walks with his dad in the evening. They took me to their temple where they had their service, and it was a community-based service. And I remember there being a tabla player and 2 harmonium players. It was like these small piano-type instruments. And there was a fellow there that was wearing dark sunglasses on, and his singing was like listening to Ray Charles. It was the most soulful music I've ever heard in my life. That experience stays with me because I took a risk and I stayed with a family. And that, if there's one thing that a gift that we can give our children when they're at anywhere between 14, 15 to like 20 years old, is give them an opportunity to get out of where they live, go expand their boundaries, go live with a family someplace else, experience life from a totally different point of view. That'll bring this quality of tolerance, curiosity, and appreciation of difference to a whole nother level on this in this world.
Thanks for sharing. Any final word of wisdom for leaders and executives around the world?
If there's one thing I could say is cultivate positivity. Have a daily practice where you cultivate, where you clear out that morning. You start each day fresh. That it's a blank slate. And as positive as possible. And that's within your ability to do that. Because it's only if we have a positive view on the world are we able to bring our best selves forward and allow everybody else to bring theirs as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Rob. And I'm sure after such a great discussion and conversation, many will be curious to read your book. I'll just quote Paul Smith, who said, "Leading from your best self is a customized development plan for becoming the best version of you as a leader." And it truly is. Thanks again for your time with me today.
Thanks, Naji. And if anyone would like to send me a note, it's Rob Salafia at protagonistconsulting.com.
Thank you so much. And we will put the contacts on our website too. So thank you all for tuning in today. If you want to listen to more inspiring and powerful stories, make sure to keep an eye on SpreadLoveIO.com for new weekly episodes and subscribe to your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any of those special bonus episodes. If you enjoyed this one, I would like to welcome you to leave an honest review. Let's stay in touch and spread on SpreadLoveIO social media and keep spreading love in our organizations.